Hi all, I wanted to do a more detailed analysis of Game 8 of the World Chess Championship match. So here it is. Game 8, d4 for Magnus Carlsen was playing white. We saw knight f6 and we saw knight f3 for Magnus, not the usual c4 you might expect. d5, and now we see the Colle system, e3. So in the Colle system the bishop's hemmed in. It might fianchetto later. White is often playing for e4 or c4. And often it just transposes into normal lines actually if white plays c4. Here e6. Now we see bishop d3, c5. And according to Livebook, curiously actually, there's bishop e2 mentioned here, which looks ridiculous. I think it's by transposition, bishop e2. We have positions like this where maybe c6, c5 was played in two moves. But I think the usual moves, if we get this move order, is b3 or c3. Here b3 was played. So with the fianchetto, e5 is going to be under control more. Bishop e7. Both sides castle. Bishop b2. b6. So black is mirroring here the fianchetto of the queenside bishop to put more pressure on e4. D takes c5. So this opens up the bishop. Black played bishop takes c5. I mean, also possible was b takes, but maybe black didn't want this kind of position where this pawn might actually be a target later on c5. So it's a more of a targetless position to play bishop takes. But of course the d4 square, these two squares are more under control now than maybe, well, especially the d4. So knight bd2, bishop b7, queen e2, and now we see knight bd7. Sorry, I meant to say knight bd2 if I said knight bd7 there. So both sides have got similar piece configurations here. Now whether to play e4 or c4, e4 I think just leads to an equal position. c4 is more ambitious. That's what Magnus played here. On e4 I think black can actually just take here and just retreat the bishop, and this is actually quite a solid position. This should be about equal. Black's done nothing really wrong. His structure is quite good, and yeah, this is technically equal. So we see the more ambitious c4 move. D takes, and it seems as though, hang on a sec, white's got a nice grip on e5 here. Is that worth anything? Queen e7, a3, and white threatens now b4, winning that dark square bishop. It has to go back there, it can be snapped up. So we see a5 slightly loosening the b5 square. So there are some imbalances in this position emerging. Knight d4, the knight's heading for b5, it seems, in some lines. Rook fd8, rook fd1, rook ac8, and yeah, this mirroring a bit here, rook ac1. But now after knight f8, things are getting a little bit more interesting. Okay, I'm just turning off my Skype, put on the DN, do not disturb sign, sorry. Things are getting more interesting. So interesting I've done that. Okay, things are getting more interesting after knight f8. Black might be playing knight g6 to h4 to hit g2 here. And it's for this reason that it seems g2 is a concern actually now. And Magnus addresses this in advance. Petrosian-esque type move, because Petrosian would sniff out the opponent's attacks or thoughts of attack before they ever happened. Queen e1 vacates the f1 square to be able to defend g2 well in advance. So we see knight g6, and now in advance of any knight h4, bishop f1. But now one of the slight downsides of queen going to e1 is actually that g4 square is available to black, and a knight pounces there, and usually you're told if a knight goes to the 5th you want to try and evict it. That's the general rule because they're kind of dangerous. But here white instead leaves that knight and plays knight b5, and here is a very interesting tactical moment. which is actually of some interest. Black played here. Maybe he didn't like this knight and wanted to kick that knight rather than try and celebrate his own potential attacking opportunities. There are pieces actually pointed at the white king here too, and in fact this one is also, you know, potentially dangerous. You see that white's bishop here is passive compared to black's. You know, black's bishops are in this position more aggressive, and in fact there's a move here which is actually quite aggressive, believe it or not, especially for World Chess Championship standards. The move is Queen G5, and you might think, what on earth does this do? Because isn't everything securely protected? I'll give you an example. A4. Can you see what black can do here in this position if A4 is played? So 5 seconds. Find the best move for black. Okay, knight F4. Yeah, this is devastating. It's opening up this bishop as well, and we have the glare of both bishops after takes. And the point is here, Queen H4 threatens mate and also Bishop F2. And if H3, then in fact we even have better than taking the queen here. Can you see what black can play? Yep, Queen takes H3 checkmate. Yeah, this is all stemming from Queen G5. And if G3, say, then Queen H5, this is also terrible, because this swing back goes into the weakened light squares. And this is horrible after Bishop G2, Knight F3. The Queen's awkward there. If white has to take that, he's just getting mated on light squares or losing the Queen. Yeah, this is horrible, horrible, horrible losing. So, but there is an answer to Queen G5. It's not a total like forced win. There's an answer here, but it's not brilliant. It's not ideal, H3. But it does kick the knight now. And if white has to give up the dark square bishop because of this knight F3 threat, then black's a little bit better. This is a position. Now I'm just following this through. Say this move. White still has that D file, so it's not all completely gloomy, but black's a little bit better. So this is more ideal than what was played, which was actually in this position. So the Queen G5 offers some interesting dynamic possibilities, believe it or not. So Bishop C6, which makes this game worth revisiting for detailed analysis, I must admit. So Bishop C6 was played, so it's a little bit imprecise, it seems, compared to Queen G5. We see that protected, and it's no point for black to take on here, although it's double pawns. Black played Bishop D5. On Bishop takes B5, let's have a quick look. A takes. There's imbalances here. Queen C7 threatens mate, so say G3. This position is going to be slightly better for white. It doesn't matter about the double pawns. Look at white's bishops, especially that light square bishop. It's got nice control on light squares. So I'm not sure it's that worthwhile to take on B5. So Bishop D5 was played here. Now Bishop D4. White is threatening now. Can you see what white's threatening? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, white's threatening knight takes B6. So that has to be taken care of. We see some exchanges. Bishop takes C4. Rook takes. Bishop takes D4. Rook D takes. Let's have a look at this position for a moment. If the other rook and take, is it a big deal? I'm not sure it is. Yeah, the other rook could have taken as well. All right, but rook BD4 takes. But here is the interesting moment where Magnus maybe was in a risk-taking mood in this game, and he took with the B pawn, so he's fracturing his own pawn structure. He's, you know, creating two isolated pawns. I know the knight's hit at the moment. That moves. But yeah, some risk has been taken because the knight can potentially get a blockade square as well, hitting A4, which is not protected by anything. So a bit of risk taking. Queen D2. Now maybe the idea is like, if, well, it's not going to happen rook takes d4 because it heals white's pawn structure. Black just moved the rook here. He doesn't want to commit to healing white's pawn structure and giving white too much dynamic play. So it looks like a chicken move to play rook b8. But if we look at this position with rook takes d4, I think white's better. That would be good for white. There's possibilities even for c5, maybe. Yeah, to take a5, get an a pawn. Just give you this example here. Queen takes a5, yeah, and white's got that outside pass pawn, for example. So yeah, I think we see this kind of chicken move instead, but it's sensible. It gives white apparently, you know, d-file authority, and not only that, you know, ordinarily this would be a great position. It totally seems to justify, you know, doing this decision, because the bishop's coming here across this lovely diagonal. It's got no counterpart, and we've got access to squares like c6 potentially, and the knight's kind of aggressive on b5. We see knight e5, threatening knight f3 check. That's parried, and also the bishop wants to go there anyway. h6. Now this is a nuisance knight. I guess it's seen as a nuisance knight, and we see a kind of weakening move, f4, which is unnecessary actually. It does weaken e3, it does weaken potentially this diagonal. It doesn't look at all as though it can be exploited though at this moment, does it, to play f4, but a more solid move which doesn't create more weaknesses and imbalances. Engines don't suggest f4. I mean, I think they kind of see that as an equalizing move for black. h3, not even here, you know, just playing around with a queen move is to be preferred, or knight d6, you know, queen c2. f4 is not mentioned. It's kind of weakening even in this position. Well, there's knight takes c4 in that position, pardon me. So anyway, yeah, we'd have to protect c4 anyway. This is one of the weakened pawns. So we see f4 immediately. Maybe that's the concern, that white's going to be a bit passive actually. Maybe that's why it's kicked, because of rook c8 upcoming, rook c8. But it does weaken e3. So we see knight ed7. But this has a weakness of the last move. It's not controlling a7, and white pounces on that with knight a7, threatening knight c6, end of game, it seems. But black plays a remarkable move now based on e3. He actually plays queen a3. It is actually justified here to lose 2 bits for the rook, which usually, you know, it isn't, but in this position it works okay, in this particular position, to play this. And it's not only hitting e3, it's hitting a4. Now let's have a look. A white played knight c6, but if he plays rook takes d7, knight takes, we get this position where the king can't go here because of queen e1 check, and if the king's brought out, then queen c1 and another pawn bites the dust. And in fact, black can virtually force a draw here in this scenario like this. Here threatening queen h1, black can virtually force a draw. So it's no good to take, it seems, there. So in this position it seems no good. It just leads to a forced draw, it seems. We see knight c6 instead. And now black protects, well, his rook's attacked. He protects f7 in advance of any, maybe swinging back to e5. Maybe f7 is going to be an issue later. So again, is offering this 2 knights for similar reasons. It's not working there. h3, you might think now this is on, and it moves. But look at a4. Out of this, a4 is now proven to be kind of weak, and it's dropping, and so we've got major imbalance and risk now for both sides in a way, because taking these pieces are slightly offside away from the king. We see now rook d8. White's really going for it with rook d8. Black has to be very careful. He plays actually g6. Now before we get onto this, in this position e4 is also very promising, as it seems to dislodge a knight. Knight c5, e5, and you see this control, it's like dislodging a knight. Why wouldn't white want this? It's interesting here actually, it is possible for black to play knight h5, and if queen f2, f5, and this is getting murky, very murky position, where it's not entirely clear actually. White's under fire here on the king side, but there's also a computer move in this position, this move, which is staggering, based on trying to get a key check on the second rank. If takes knight b3, the key check, and this position with a4 is equal, because again it's kind of balanced, knight bishop, but the outside pawn is balanced. So this is all very complicated stuff if e4 has been played, which looks like a natural kind of move to try and improve the position, because white controls that d file. But no, white went all in with rook d8, maybe dissuaded by the knight h5 variation in particular. The other one's very difficult to see. So rook d8, g6, trying to get out of pins here. If we look at this, it's very tricky. If knight c5, then that loses contact with the e7 square. So taking check is winning a piece, end of game. And also if king h7, we just take the rook and check here, and we win the knight on a4. So there's very limited actual possibilities here. Knight c3, we take here, take the knight. So g6 is a move which is trying to get the king out of this pin. But now we see a staggering sequence: queen d4, king g7, another bit of risk taking by Magnus. He can perhaps try and just control this d file. I know he's like a pawn down here, but he sacks another pawn with c5. Yeah, this, before we get onto that, I think white can actually try and maintain the d file. Rook d7, for example, was given as about equal, just using that newly found pin. And this is tricky, you know, because maybe the rook can go to a7 soon. So this move looks logical, right? Because we can put this pass pawn under lock and key and have a nasty pin here, and white shouldn't be losing this necessarily. In fact, g4 looks aggressive, threatening g5, and we get this sort of position where black's just about holding on because of this pin here, stopping g5. But yeah, white could hold the position basically with rook d7, it seems. Here, rook d7. Rook d6, maybe not as hot. Queen b2, challenging the queen. Yeah, it seems the precise move might be rook d7, just to hold on with equality. But we see c5, so a very ambitious move, and it's got a few tricks up its sleeve. On black played rook takes d8 in the game. Pardon me. Okay, so c5 was played. Now here, rook takes d8 was played. Now let's examine queen takes c5 for a moment. Let's just check this out. Queen takes, rook takes, knight takes, queen takes e3. This looks crazy, but the engines that giving this is equal, because black's got things like knight h5. It's actually tricky, yeah. Even though that's crazy, that queen takes c5. But yeah, it's mad, but it seems as though this might be equal, just offering the a4 knight. B takes c5. Falls victim to queen d6, where white's getting into e7. He's threatening queen takes f8. If takes here, the point is queen e7. This pawn pins. Black cannot defend against queen e7. And white's much better here. White's winning this position. Even though this g3 is an issue here, it gets to be protected. Okay, so we'll go back to the position of c5. So it's interesting possibilities, very interesting. So b takes seems to lose. On rook takes, well, that was played. But yeah, so that's a very clever move in many respects. c5. Let's just check this out again. Rook takes is one of the best moves that was played. Actually, that was the move played and it's best. Queen takes c5, believe it or not, is equal. Queen c3, white's actually slightly better after the queen c3, taking. Because the two connected pass pawns provide some sort of thing for black. But yeah, no, the best is what was played, just rook takes d8. So a critical moment there. We see knight takes d8. Knight takes c5, and it seems as though white's still getting in this queen d6 to e7 here. So plays queen d6. Now here, it seems against queen e7, the very strongest move to stop this idea of getting f7 wasn't played here. We see a move which is enough only for equality, played by Sergey. The move which appears to be really, really strong, the strongest, maybe even stronger than queen a2, is queen a4. So if queen e7, we can repulse the queen with queen d7, protecting f7 just in time. And this is just hopeless for white. If white's forced to take on b6, then we have this outside pass pawn. This is a very good scenario for black, which ultimately, with best play, would be winning. Black can start to consider pushing the pawn, and it's pretty solid. In fact, the knight is kind of, what is it doing there? If it goes back, a4, let's have a look at this position. Black can even play on this side of the board a bit, but essentially, yeah, white's totally on the back foot here with queen a4. Interestingly, queen a2 is also another way of protecting f7, but tactically, more tactically with e5. But this is not necessary, this kind of pyrotechnics, although black is slightly better here. Is holding f7 from there. Pardon me. If queen d6, queen f2 is even possible now as well. Yeah, black's slightly better, but it seems the clearest was actually queen a4. So this position after this queen d6, which shows that, you know, but I think it has to be borne in mind, this is approaching move 40, and Sergey was under severe time pressure, so maybe Magnus was trying his luck a bit, and you know, it did result in this move, which is only enough with best play for a draw, because now white breaks into black's king position with a very clever move. Can you spot it? If I give you 5 seconds, white to play and break in for at least a draw. Starting from now. Okay, knight takes e6 jack. Now the knight can't take because the queen drops off, which means the pawn has to unfortunately take, which allows the check. And yeah, it seems as though this looks really dangerous now. After a4, e4 shuts down the defense of g6, and black has to come back here, loses this pawn, and here white can just force a draw if he wants. Queen e8 check, We're past move 40. Magnus could have just forced the draw in this position with queen g6 check. Yeah, it's really the case that white can force a draw. There's no way out of this. If king h8, all right, let's test this though. The thing is, okay, it looks as though this pawn's dangerous. e5, a3, queen b1, and if white gets another move, he'll play queen takes b8 and go queen takes b6 and go behind the pawn. It's like here, it's in balance anyway. Okay, this is a tricky line. No, I must admit, but we get the perpetual checks here. Okay, so the trickiest test is this line where the king is going to h8. Queen b1 there is sufficient, or in fact bishop e4 threatens mate. This is forcing this position. It's if this, then there's queen a4 catches the pawn in time. If queen e8, stop queen a4, queen b4, and if here, queen a3 catches the pawn. And if here, queen a8, looks really dangerous, doesn't it? But queen e7 is perpetual check time. So we're getting the impression basically that it seems that white could have had a draw by force with careful, precise play. But he plays instead queen c6, queen d8, and black threatens now a3. This pawn's getting really dangerous. We see f5, really good move actually. Now even here white's potentially drawing after a3, f takes e6. Black's best move technically, believe it or not, is king h7. Sergey played king g7, which actually is a tiny advantage for white on pure engine analysis. So king g7 was played. If a2, let's rule out a2, e7 and queen a8 check is actually a slightly better for white position. This position here is slightly better for white. It can't take here because of queen e2 winning that piece. So that's slightly better for white. Pawn up there. Now, so in the game it seems king g7 was played, which is actually slightly better for white if queen b5 is played. Yeah, believe it or not, this position is really tricky for black. If a2 then check picks up the pawn and white's actually fine, more than fine, an advantage technically. Yeah, these checks are really dangerous after queen b5. If knight takes e6, queen b4, if here, pick up the pawn again with check. Yeah, there's very little it seems black can do actually to try and prove advantage. If queen here, e7, we're queening this pawn potentially. Here, e5 hits the queen. e8, this is actually winning for white, this position, off the check. Believe it or not, this is winning for white. Check, check, and yeah, black's king is getting it. Yeah, so queen b5 leaves white with a tiny advantage theoretically, believe it or not, in this position. So it seems actually king h8 should have been played technically. Sorry, king h7 should have been played, and this is more equal apparently. Because I think we just have perpetual checks. They look a bit scary, but it's a way of getting perpetual checks. Yeah, it's all perpetual check time. So anyway, king g7 was played. So queen b5 is the absolute best move, which even offers white a small advantage. But here we see e7, which is a mistake. black's better still here. Knight d3, this is a dangerous outside pass pawn, and the knight is heading for a beautiful blockade square in the center. Queen a5, this pawn being left here is dangerous. Queen c5. Now if taking, then there's no time to stop this pawn. The bishop's helpless to stop the pawn. So queen a6, but knight e5. Okay, now I think even here there might have been some chances for white with h4 in this position. H4 in this position is tricky for black. Black needs to be, if black played h5 here, it's check. There's quite a few checks because the bishop's got potential for h3. Yeah, black's got to be careful. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for checks. But we see actually queen e6 instead, which is away from putting that pawn under lock and key. And actually black has a great move here which secures advantage, and he played it. He played the top like engine move, h5. It's like the top move to get an advantage for black. Now one of the points is, this is really critical for white with best play even. If queen a6, queen c1, with the threat of queen b2, then we've got things like knight f3 check coming on. So it's not just dragging the pawn, it's about white's king safety here. If check, check. This position h4 is dangerous on the dark squares, undermining all the dark squares. With a2 to follow. This is a crazy line, but yeah, white's falling to bits. It's not just the pawn, it's his king and the dark squares that have been undermined. So yeah, this is actually a really bad position after h5, whatever white does. Queen a6 does not seem sufficient, basically. It's much more stubborn, but yeah, it seems as though black's actually better after queen c3, technically. So it's like combining the outside pass pawn with dark squares around white's king. But here, white accelerated demise with h4. This is like a mistake. It just immediately finishes the game. But yeah, it immediately finishes the game. But this was already a mistake. This is already queen e6 was critical. This is a critical position after queen a6 here anyway. This as I say, queen c3 just seems to be very, very good for black. Or sorry, queen b4, more precise, queen b4. Yeah. It requires great accuracy, but black has a better position. But anyway, h4 was played, and this allows now this crushing move, absolutely crushing. a2, yeah, and this is forcing Magnus's resignation. Let's have a look. So queen takes a2. The point is check here, queen g1, and can white get perpetual checks? Well, he can't check on a7, but he can check on, well, not a1 to take, but we can check on b2. But after king g6, you see that white can't check on b6 here. So this leaves now only one move to stop queen h2, which is bishop f3, and then knight f2 wins the queen. End the game. Yeah, I just thought this game had a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but I think this is really a critical moment, yeah, where white didn't need to do even queen e6. It seems h4 might actually be the best move here in this particular position. It's all about the absolute finesses of the position, but it seems here white is just about okay to hold the balance, it seems. Just about. I'll give you another example. Check. Oh, not check. Check here. Queen e7. You see, if a2, we have queen e6 check, and queen takes a2. And if here, yeah, it's like the potential for checks. Okay, yeah, so it seems h4 was a fatal, absolutely, in that position we had, it was a fatal mistake. Just ending the game. Just ended the game here. Okay, I hope you got something out of this deeper analysis. I think I did. There's a lot of lessons to learn from a game. If you look at a lot more of the variations, you get more from it, I think. But you need more time to check out the video. And also, please excuse the exploratory analysis. Some of it, you know, is exploratory as well as prepared notes combination here. But I hope I've given more insight than I did on the day itself. Well, after the round was played. Comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.